There is a moment every morning that decides everything. Not your goals, not your plans, not even your actions, but your direction. And most people lose it before they even realize it exists. They wake up, reach for their phone, scroll without thinking, react without intention, and in that short space of time they give away control. Control of their attention, control of their mindset, control of their day. And what feels like a small habit becomes a pattern that shapes how they think, how they act, how they live. But there is a small percentage of people who do something different. They do not react, they prepare. They understand that control is not something you gain later in the day. It is something you establish immediately. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius did not begin his mornings with distraction. He began them with awareness. He reminded himself of the challenges ahead, the people he would meet, the obstacles he would face, not to feel discouraged, but to be ready, because he understood something powerful. If you prepare your mind early, you do not get overwhelmed later. And that preparation begins with one thing, your first thought. If you want more Stoic wisdom that strengthens your mindset daily, subscribe to the channel. Because control begins with how you think. 1. You control the first thought. Before the world speaks to you, your mind speaks first, and that voice matters more than anything you will hear all day, because it sets the tone, the direction, the perspective through which you experience everything else. Most people ignore this. They allow external noise to take over immediately. Notifications, messages, information, and without realizing it, they surrender control. But the Stoics understood something most people overlook. Your interpretation of reality begins within you. The teacher Epictetus taught that it is not events that disturb us, but our judgment about them. And that judgment is formed in your thoughts. If your first thought is scattered, your day becomes scattered. If your first thought is negative, your reactions follow that pattern. But if your first thought is intentional, focused, grounded, then everything that follows begins from a place of control. A strong person does not leave this to chance. They choose their first thought. They guide it. They direct it. They remind themselves of what matters, of what is within their control, of how they want to act. This is not complicated, but it requires awareness, because your mind will always move in a direction. The question is whether you choose that direction or allow it to be chosen for you. Each morning is an opportunity to take control before anything else does. And when you use that moment intentionally, something shifts. You feel calmer, more focused, more prepared, because now you are not reacting to your day, you are guiding it. If this message is making you more aware of how you start your day, subscribe to the channel, because the way you begin determines the way you continue. 2. You do not negotiate with yourself. There is a quiet conversation that happens every morning. A negotiation. It sounds small, almost harmless, but it shapes everything that follows. You tell yourself, just a few more minutes, I will start later, I will do it when I feel ready. And in that moment, something important happens. You give away control, because hesitation creates delay, and delay becomes habit. The philosopher Seneca warned that much of life is wasted in waiting. Waiting for the right moment, waiting for the right feeling, waiting for the right conditions. But those conditions rarely come, and even when they do not last. A strong person does not negotiate with themselves, they decide. And once they decide, they act. Not aggressively, not impulsively, but clearly, decisively, because they understand that discipline is not built in big moments, it is built in small ones. Each time you act without hesitation, you strengthen your ability to act again. Each time you delay, you reinforce the habit of delay. This is how patterns are formed, and those patterns become your identity. A mentally strong person protects their decisions. They do not allow their mind to weaken them with excuses. They recognize the voice of hesitation, and they move anyway, because they know that action creates momentum, and momentum creates control. Each morning when you refuse to negotiate with yourself, something changes. You build trust. Trust in your ability to follow through. Trust in your ability to act. Trust in your ability to lead yourself. And that trust becomes confidence, real confidence. Not based on outcomes, but based on consistency. If this message is pushing you to stop delaying and start acting, subscribe to the channel, because discipline begins the moment you stop negotiating. 3. You embrace what is difficult. There is a moment in every day where you are faced with a choice, not a dramatic choice, not one that feels life-changing in the moment, but one that quietly determines your direction. You can choose what is easy, or you can choose what is necessary. Most people choose what is easy, not because they lack ambition, but because comfort feels safe. It feels familiar. It feels effortless. And after a long day, comfort whispers that you deserve it, that you can delay effort, that you can avoid difficulty just this once. But that just this once becomes a pattern, and that pattern becomes your life. Because every time you choose comfort over challenge, you reinforce the habit of staying the same. The Stoics understood something most people avoid. Discomfort is not the problem, it is the path. The teacher Epictetus believed that difficulty is what shapes character, not ease, not convenience, but resistance. When something feels difficult, it is often a signal that you are moving beyond your current limits, a signal that growth is happening. But most people misinterpret this signal. They see discomfort as something to avoid, something negative, something to escape, and in doing so, they move away from growth. A strong person does something different. They lean into discomfort, not recklessly, but intentionally. They understand that every challenge carries opportunity to improve, to adapt, to become stronger. At first, discomfort feels overwhelming. It creates resistance. It makes you question your ability. It makes you doubt yourself. But if you stay with it, if you continue despite it, something changes. What once felt difficult becomes manageable. What once felt uncomfortable becomes familiar. And once it becomes familiar, it loses its power over you. This is how resilience is built, not through ease, but through repeated exposure to challenge. Each time you choose what is difficult, you expand your capacity. Each time you avoid it, you shrink it. A mentally strong person does not seek comfort as a goal. They seek growth. And they understand that growth requires discomfort. Each morning when you remind yourself to embrace what is difficult, you shift your mindset. You stop asking how to avoid effort and start asking how to use it. Because difficulty is no longer something to fear, it becomes something to build from. If this message is pushing you to face what you have been avoiding, if it is encouraging you to step into discomfort, subscribe to the channel. Because growth begins the moment you stop choosing what is easy. 4. You focus only on what matters. There is a reason many people feel busy, but not productive. They are doing things, moving constantly, responding to demands. but at the end of the day, they feel like nothing meaningful was accomplished. This is the effect of distraction. Distraction is not always obvious. It does not always look like wasting time. Sometimes it looks like activity, constant movement, endless tasks. But without direction, activity becomes noise. And noise destroys focus. The Stoics understood the value of clarity. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to focus only on what is essential. Nothing more, nothing less. Because not everything deserves your attention, and not everything deserves your energy. A strong person begins their day with intention. They decide what matters, they define their priorities, and they protect their focus. Because focus is a limited resource. Every distraction takes something from you. Your time, your energy, your clarity. And over time, those small losses become significant. A mentally strong person recognizes this. They do not allow their attention to be pulled in every direction. They direct it, they choose where it goes, and they commit to it. This is not about doing more. It is about doing what matters. Because when your energy is focused, your results improve. When your attention is clear, your actions become effective. Each morning, when you remind yourself to focus only on what matters, something shifts. You stop reacting to everything. You stop chasing distractions. You begin to act with purpose, with intention, with clarity, and that clarity creates progress, real progress, because now your effort is aligned with your priorities. A strong person does not try to do everything. They do the right things, and they do them well. If this message is helping you regain clarity in your day, if it is reminding you to protect your focus, subscribe to the channel because clarity is the foundation of control. 5. You act without waiting. There is a silent habit that keeps most people stuck. They wait. They wait for the right moment, the right mood, the right level of motivation. And while they are waiting, time moves, opportunities pass. Progress slows. Because waiting feels safe, it feels like preparation. But in reality, it is often just delay. The Stoics understood something most people resist. Action creates clarity. Not waiting, not thinking, not planning endlessly, but doing. The philosopher Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. We imagine effort will be too difficult. We imagine discomfort will be too much. We build resistance in our minds before we even begin. But once we act, something changes. The resistance weakens. The uncertainty fades. The path becomes clearer. This is why action is powerful. It cuts through doubt. It breaks hesitation. It creates momentum. Each time you act without waiting, you prove something to yourself. That you are capable of moving forward without perfect conditions. That you do not need to feel ready to begin. And over time, that builds confidence. Real confidence. Not based on outcomes, but based on your ability to act. A strong person does not wait for the perfect moment. They create it through action, through movement, through decision. Each morning when you remind yourself to act without waiting, you remove delay, you remove excuses, you create momentum, and momentum creates progress. If this message is pushing you to take action today, subscribe to the channel, because action is what turns intention into reality. 6. You stay consistent. There is a reason most people never reach their potential. It is not lack of intelligence, it is not lack of opportunity, it is inconsistency. They start with energy, with motivation, with intention. But over time that energy fades. Distractions appear, life becomes busy, and slowly they stop. Not suddenly, but gradually they skip a day, then another, until what once felt important becomes distant, and eventually it disappears. This is how progress is lost, not through failure, but through inconsistency. The Stoics believed in steady effort, daily discipline, repeated action, because they understood something powerful. Small actions, repeated consistently, create lasting change. A strong person does not rely on how they feel, they rely on what they do. Every day, even when it feels small, even when it feels slow, even when results are not visible, they continue, because they understand that progress is not always obvious, but it is always happening beneath the surface. Each action strengthens a habit. Each habit shapes identity, and over time, identity shapes results. This is how transformation happens. Quietly, gradually, consistently. A mentally strong person trusts this process. They do not rush it. They do not abandon it. They commit to it. Each day becomes an opportunity, not to be perfect, but to show up, to act, to move forward, and over time those small efforts compound. They create momentum, and momentum creates results. Each morning, when you tell yourself that you will stay consistent, you shift your focus from outcomes to effort, from results to action, because effort is within your control, and when you control your effort, you control your direction. If this message is helping you stay committed to your goals, subscribe to the channel, because discipline is built daily. 7. You train your mind daily. Your mind is not fixed, it is shaped. Every thought you repeat, every idea you entertain, every belief you reinforce is forming your mindset. Most people do not realize this. They assume their thoughts are just reactions, automatic, unchangeable. But the Stoics understood something deeper. Your mind is something you train. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius treated his thoughts like something to be guided. Not followed blindly. He questioned them, he corrected them, he refined them, because he knew that an untrained mind becomes chaotic, reactive, easily influenced. And when your mind is reactive, your life becomes reactive. A strong person does not allow this. They observe their thoughts, they notice patterns, they identify what is useful and what is not, and slowly they begin to shape it. This is not something that happens once. It is daily work, quiet work, unseen work. Each time you challenge a negative thought, you weaken it. Each time you replace it with a stronger one, you reinforce it. And over time, your thinking begins to change. You become calmer, more focused, more in control. Because now, your thoughts are not controlling you. You are guiding them. This is the foundation of mental strength, not suppressing thoughts, but directing them, training them, improving them. A mentally strong person does not ignore their mind. They invest in it. They take responsibility for it, because they understand that everything begins there. Each morning, when you remind yourself to train your mind, you become more aware, more intentional. More disciplined, and that awareness changes everything. If this message is helping you take control of your thoughts, subscribe to the channel, because your mind determines your direction. 8. You take full responsibility. There is a moment in life that changes everything. A moment when you stop blaming, stop excusing, stop avoiding, and start taking responsibility. Not partial responsibility, not selective responsibility, but full responsibility. This is not easy, because responsibility is heavy. It forces you to face reality, to accept that your current situation is shaped by your actions, your habits, your decisions, and while that truth can feel uncomfortable, it is also powerful, because responsibility gives you control. When you blame others, you give away that control. You make yourself dependent on things you cannot change. People, circumstances, outcomes. But when you take responsibility, something shifts. You bring the focus back to yourself, to what you can do, to what you can improve. To what you can change. The teacher Epictetus believed that freedom comes from focusing only on what is within your control. Your thoughts, your actions, your responses. Everything else is secondary. A strong person lives by this principle. They do not waste energy blaming. They do not stay stuck in regret. They focus on action, on growth, on improvement. Each time something goes wrong, they ask a different question. Not why did this happen to me, but what can I do next? This question creates movement, it creates direction, it creates progress, because now you are no longer stuck. You are acting, you are improving, you are moving forward. A mentally strong person understands that responsibility is not about guilt, it is about ownership. Ownership of your life, ownership of your decisions, ownership of your future. And once you take ownership, you gain power. The power to change, to improve, to rebuild. Each morning when you remind yourself to take responsibility, something changes. You stop waiting, you stop blaming, you start acting. And that action creates results. If this message is pushing you to take control of your life, subscribe to the channel, because responsibility is where real change begins. 9. You protect your energy. Most people think control is about time, but it is not. It is about energy, because you can have time and still have no focus, no drive, no clarity. Energy is what allows you to act, to think clearly, to stay disciplined. And yet, most people give it away without noticing. They give it to distractions, to negativity, to unnecessary conversations, to things that do not move them forward. And by the time they need that energy, it is gone. The Stoics understood the importance of protecting your inner state, because your inner state determines your external results. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to be disturbed by things outside his control, not because they did not exist, but because they did not deserve his energy. A strong person does the same. They become selective, not with everything, but with what they allow into their mind. They do not engage in every argument. They do not react to every distraction. They do not give attention to everything that demands it, because they understand that attention is expensive and energy is limited. Each time you react unnecessarily, you lose something: focus, clarity, momentum, and over time those small losses become significant. A mentally strong person protects their energy. They guard their attention. They choose where their focus goes, because they know that where attention goes, energy flows. And where energy flows, results follow. Each morning when you remind yourself to protect your energy, something shifts. You become more aware of what drains you, and more intentional about what fuels you. You begin to move differently, think differently, act differently. Because now your energy is aligned with your purpose. If this message is helping you become more intentional with your energy, subscribe to the channel, because focus is built by protecting what matters. 10. Total control is built daily. There is a belief that control is something you achieve once, something you reach, something you finally have. But that is not how it works. Control is not a destination. It is a practice, something you build every day, through your thoughts, through your actions, through your discipline. The Stoics did not wait to become strong. They trained daily, they improved daily, they reflected daily, because they understood something powerful. What you repeat, you become. If you repeat distraction, you become distracted. If you repeat discipline, you become disciplined. If you repeat awareness, you become aware. This is the process, simple but demanding, because it requires consistency. A strong person does not rely on occasional effort. They rely on daily action. They show up every day, not perfectly, but intentionally. They understand that control is built in small moments, in the decisions no one sees, in the actions no one applauds, in the discipline no one recognizes. But those small moments compound. They build habits, they shape identity, they create results. And over time, those results become visible, not because of one big change, but because of many small ones. Each morning, when you remind yourself that control is built daily, you remove pressure. You stop looking for quick results. You focus on consistent effort, and that focus creates progress, real progress. A mentally strong person trusts this process. They commit to it, they live it, because they know that control is not something you find, it is something you build. If this message is helping you stay disciplined daily, subscribe to the channel. Because consistency is what creates transformation. The difference between the 1% and everyone else is not talent, it is not intelligence, it is not luck. It is discipline, it is awareness, it is control, and it begins in the morning. Before the world reaches you, you reach yourself, through your thoughts, through your decisions. Through your mindset. Most people never take control of this moment. They react, they drift, they follow. But a small percentage does something different. They lead themselves. They guide their thoughts. They act with intention. And over time, that difference compounds. It shapes how they think, how they act, how they live, until one day their life looks completely different. not because they waited for change, but because they created it, daily, consistently, intentionally. If you made it this far, it means something in you is ready, ready to improve, ready to take control, ready to become stronger. But what matters now is action, not tomorrow, not later. Now. Take one idea from this video, apply it in your next morning, because that is where change begins. If this video helped you think differently, if it gave you clarity, if it pushed you to take control, subscribe to the channel. Because this is where you build discipline. This is where you build focus. This is where you build a stronger mind. And when you take control of your mind, you take control of your life. Everything you want begins there.